What's up, everybody? Frederick Murphy here, History Before Us, and I am back in my home state of Tennessee. I'm not in Clarksville, Tennessee, where I was raised, but I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I have been trying to come to this site for, I want to say about a year and some change now. Patrick, who is an individual that works here at the site, who's about to give us a tour, and we tried to get this together in 2025, but it just didn't work out. But it's 2026, it's a new year and new opportunities, and I am here at the Mabry-Hazen House, and Patrick, my man, is up there, who grew up on the Gulf Coast, but is now an official Tennessean, is what we're going to call him. How's it going, brother?
Good to see you, Frederick. Glad to have you here today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, thank you for allowing me to come out here. We finally made it happen.
Yeah.
After multiple inboxes on Instagram, we finally made it happen. But I thought that this site was really important because of how intentional you are about telling a full comprehensive story.
Yes.
Right? And so that's what brought me here, as well as the basketball tournament, of course. But I'm glad to be here. I've seen this site numerous times. I did a collaboration with Visit Knoxville, and this was one of the places that we were going to try to come to, but something was going on at the time and we just didn't have the time to fit it in, but we're here now.
Glad to have you all here today and help kind of showcase like the changes that have happened here, the amazing stories that are held within this house, and why it's so important for houses like this and places like this to tell those full stories.
Absolutely. So let's start off with telling us the scoop, man. Mabry-Hazen, how did this house come into being? When was it built? Who built, et cetera, et cetera?
So the house was constructed in 1857 by enslaved labor. The Mabry family moved in 1858. And until 1987, the Mabry-Hazen family lived here. So 130 years, same family lived in the house. And because of that continuity, almost all of the objects on display in the house are original to the house. So we preserve one of the largest original family collections in the US. So you've gone to a lot of historic houses, you know how rare it is to run into such an extensive collection there. But beyond that, we've got some kind of colorful, powerful stories. This is a house that we can talk about the Mabry family and their political importance in Knoxville, Joseph Mabry's commercial importance. He donates the land for Market Square, for example, so you've probably visited there, one of our cultural centers. But Mabry was a major enslaver in Knoxville, and he would start off the Civil War a vocal Confederate. But halfway through the Civil War, though, when Knoxville switched hands from Confederate to Union control, so did Joseph Mabry. Not because he had a change of heart, but rather he followed the money. And so he would offer his services to the Union Army when they arrived here. But simultaneously, we recently learned about an enslaved family here named the Franklins. And the Franklins, when the Union Army entered the city, took that opportunity to also obtain their freedom. And then after the Civil War, Mabry gets into financial trouble. And it eventually leads to that financial trouble leads to him having to sell off his land. And one of these land deals would lead to a feud with a man named Thomas O'Connor. And this feud eventually culminated in what's called the gunfight on Gay Street, where Mabry's eldest son, Joseph Jr., and O'Connor shoot and kill each other in an OK Corral style shootout right in the heart of downtown Knoxville.
Is there a historical marker for that?
No, Knoxville really. I don't know. I don't know why Knoxville doesn't want to put it in.
I'm already getting like this Hatfield McCoy vibe with that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
And so after the death of Mabry, his wife is in financial insecurity. So their eldest daughter, Alice Evelyn Mabry, married Rush Strong Hazen only 3 months after the gunfight. And that's how we become the Mabry-Hazen House, is through their union. And the Mabrys are very the Hazens are very influential in Knoxville. Rush Hazen is a very prosperous and well-liked wholesale grocer. He was a city council member. He's a philanthropist. Overall, a very good man, it seems. But Rush and Alice are very normal in this family's history, which kind of means their story's a little boring compared to the other family members. So we're going to move to the third generation of the house, and their youngest daughter, Evelyn. Evelyn was a very precocious young woman. She's admitted to the University of Tennessee at the age of 15, but she's brought up in a very traditional Victorian home and had been sheltered. So when she arrives at university, she's kind of shy and naive, but she meets a young man named Ralph Sheringhouse, and she and Ralph would fall in love and get engaged during the fervor of World War I. He'd go off to fight far, far away in South Carolina, come back on a furlough, tell Evelyn that he's going to France imminently, so convinces her that they should go to the courthouse to get married. But when they arrive at the courthouse, it's already closed. He then convinces her that, you know what, since we can't have our wedding day, we're going to have our wedding night. And so she consents to that. And then Ralph will tag her along for another 15 years until he breaks up with her in 1932. She didn't take it well, so first she thought about murdering him, and then decided the better route was to sue him, and sued him for breach of promise to marry and seduction.
Wow.
This is a very kind of antiquated lawsuit, even by the 1930s.
I was going to say, like, is that off the books?
Yeah, you actually can. I think it's only legal in maybe 1 or 2 states, but by the 1930s, most states had actually deemed these type of lawsuits illegal.
So let me do this real quick.
Yeah.
So any of you lovers out there, you heard what he said. There's 1 or 2 states that this is still, plausible. So make sure that if you're promising roses and rings, that you actually follow through with it, because you may get caught up in a lawsuit. Exactly. We don't want any of that. That's for sure.
Don't lose out on those financial opportunities,
exactly.
ladies. Evelyn will win the trial, but it does come at the cost of her social reputation.
Okay.
And she will be shunned by Knoxville society after that, and more or less becomes a woman with a scarlet letter. And she'll live out the rest of her life here. She will be civically active. She works at UT. She's an opponent to urban renewal here in East Knoxville.
Really?
But she never married, never had children. And so when she died, there's no heirs. And so when she left 2 options in her will upon her death. First option for the house was sell everything in it, give the proceeds to the Humane Society, and then destroy the house. Or the other option was convert it into a museum. And by visiting today, we can see which option was taken. So.
And this is the front porch, you all. It's a quintessential wraparound Southern front porch. I can imagine that we've had our sweet teas and everything else that have been a part of this at one point of time. And people who were free and people who were enslaved once, of course, walked these grounds in this home. What style of architecture is the home?
So this is a very quintessential example of Southern Italianate style. So very popular in that time period, but it's actually kind of rare to find antebellum Italianate homes in the South. You find them a lot in Savannah, a lot in Charleston, but you move out of those areas and you just don't see as many examples because during the height of their popularity, Civil War and Reconstruction.
For sure.
So just don't have the kind of the capital available to them. And Mabry's a major land speculator. We call him a real estate developer today. So he and a couple other men actually own several thousand acres here in East Knoxville, and we're developing this into a new suburb of the city. And what's a great way to sell plots of land? Build a nice house on a prominent space that you could help sell those lands by saying, can you imagine a house like this for you? And so there's lots of little architectural features of this house that are really progressive for the time period. We've got closets, we've got coal-burning fireplaces.
Wow.
Even the architecture itself is kind of an example of that sort of kind of on the forefront of style.
Okay, good stuff. And so can we get in?
Yeah, let's go on in.
Let's make it happen. Doors original?
Yes. Okay. Double doors. Needs a little work.
I like it. I like
they would need, they had a faux grain on them, and you can see that faux grain a little bit better on the interior here.
Yeah, I do see it. Wow. And this home was completed in 1857?
Yes.
Okay, do we have are there any documents as it relates to any of the enslaved folks that were here that may have been responsible for?
We have some good fragmentary evidence. Mabry owns multiple properties, so it's always been difficult to figure out where exactly the family is at any given time. But we do believe that in this case, you probably had the Franklins living here. The Franklins were the Eliza and her 10 children, but Eliza's husband, Ben Franklin, was a free man in Knoxville. And so Eliza was enslaved by Joseph Mabry and Laura Mabry, and then Ben would live elsewhere. And Ben's story is a fascinating one too, because he is a free man here, but he's also a skilled laborer. He's a plasterer here in Knoxville. And so I have a theory that he may have plastered Mabry-Hazen House. Okay. But otherwise, we've been able to document 47 individuals that Mabry enslaved at one point or one point or another. Mabry, we only have names for about 41 of those individuals. And we really just don't know where they specifically were at any given time.
Gotcha.
Because although we have all the stuff of the Mabry-Hazen family, we have very little writings from them. So no day ledgers, a couple day record books. And so it's been a lot of very against the grain research to uncover the other inhabitants of this house.
Why do you feel that, because Southern families, as you know, during that time period, wrote everything down.
Yeah.
So why here do you feel like that may have been a little bit different? Do you feel like because when he did cross over to union lines, if you will, right?
Yeah.
From that monetary standpoint, that perhaps that was an additional way for him to be able to make money. So keeping a record of chattel enslavement or enslaved folks maybe wasn't. I'm curious on what your thoughts.
My thoughts would be that I think there's two reasons. Okay. One, like you're alluding to, that Joseph Mabry didn't want anybody tracking his past transactions. And we actually have an example of this.
Okay.
So we have Joseph Mabry's day book from 1860. So it's a listing of all his various business dealings.
Okay.
Starts January 1860 on page 1, runs till May 1861, which is page 23.
And he remembers the page, y'all. So he knows his book in and out.
Oh, yeah. But here's the thing. Pages 24 through 85 were cut out.
24 through 85?
Yes.
So do you think that probably was...
That's all his Confederate dealings.
And this is him?
This is the general here. He would take the moniker the general. He was given that honorific for his contributions to the Confederacy during the Civil War. He never served in the military himself. And so
it's like getting an honorary doctorate now.
I guess so. I think doctorates at least have a little more a claim to it. They may have done something that had earned it. In his case, he opened a clothing depot. He used his railroad to move goods for the military, and he financed the raising of a Confederate battery here.
Okay. Did he get any pushback? Like, has there been any documentation of Confederate soldiers at the time when he did switch over?
Knoxville is a very complicated story of the Civil War because it's such a very personal division within the city. Knoxville, in the secession vote of 1861, is split right down the middle.
Okay.
And if you had gone to Gay Street, our main downtown road, on April 27th, 1861, you could have seen dueling rallies occur simultaneously. Unionist rally on the south end of the street, a Confederate military parade on the north side. And East Tennessee overall is kind of a microcosm of the larger conflict because of the unionist sympathies here and the divisions that generates.
And even when you talk about, because I've spent a lot of time in Jonesboro, Kingsport, like in that part of East Tennessee, where you had Underground Railroad activity that was there. You had the abolition newspaper.
Elihu Embry and the Emancipator.
And so this region in Appalachia in Tennessee is very interesting.
Yes, it's a very complex story of the Civil War. And so with Mabry, it doesn't seem like he ever got any pushback. And in fact, by 1866, he's telling everybody he had always been a Union man. And for a hot minute, he was actually aligned with the radical Republican Party here in Knoxville until a couple years later when he reverted back to his Democratic origins. And then he would be elected to the 1870 Tennessee Constitutional Convention and serve as a delegate there, more or less aligning with the Redeemers during that time. So Mabry becomes part of the Redeemers here in Knoxville, and that's a larger political movement throughout the South to push back against the Reconstruction era policies that had been implemented in many states, and it's starting to see a retraction of a lot of that the rights Black folks had gained across the South at that time. You'll see poll tax enacted. You'll see, I can't remember if Tennessee enacted a grandfather clause, but a lot of that is put into that third constitution. Now, is Joseph Mabry necessarily offering those amendments, offering those sort of policies? No, because he's always concerned with his pocketbook. And so his entire thing was working to try and get railroad investments and stocks and the support of the state, which become a problem later on because he will be given a bunch of money by the state to complete a railroad to Kentucky, but he'll never complete that railroad.
Did he get out of Dodge before that, or did he pass?
No, he got shot instead.
Okay, got it. So I didn't know that story. So we can go into that. But so we're going into this first room here.
This is the formal parlor.
Okay, formal parlor.
So this is,
and again, most of this stuff is
about
original.
95% of everything you're seeing is original to the house.
Golly.
Like in this room, for example, the only thing that's not original is this table here. So this is their furniture. A lot of this is Rococo pieces from about the 1850s to 1860s. So you can imagine that, a number of people have sat on these pieces. And, we do know that there were some Confederate generals that have visited the house, but we also know this was a Union headquarters during the Civil War. And you have Samuel Lunt, who had actually, who was a quartermaster, named this as his headquarters. So, you probably have John Foster, some of these Civil War figures coming in here.
I mean, for this to be 90% original, man, I mean, like, that's pretty amazing. I've been in a lot of historic homes, and I mean a lot. And a lot of this stuff is, of course, time period piece, and people are, just cherry picking it from here and there, borrowing it from Peter to Rob Paul and everything else. But this is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's so neat because sometimes you can just pick up an object. Like this case, this is one of our Bibles here, and this belonged to Laura Mabry.
Yeah, Laura Mabry. 1865, December. So this is December 25th. So
Christmas Day.
Yes, and then also in the state of Tennessee, that's when the Klan came into.
And shortly after, slavery was legally abolished in Tennessee. I think one of the more interesting things about considering emancipation in Tennessee is that it gives you a good idea of the really uneven process of it. That just because Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, that things were all great then.
Yeah.
Because Tennessee was exempt.
Yep.
And so you have this, when the Union Army enters the city, there's a major debate amongst white Unionists about the future of slavery. And it caused a lot of political tension and eventually infighting.
Yeah.
And so although Lincoln enacts the Emancipation Proclamation in January 1863, Knoxville is liberated in September of 63, the state did not legally abolish slavery until February 1865.
Yeah, that's wild. And so these pictures, do we know who they are?
So this is the third generation. These are Evelyn's older sisters. This is Lillian and Marie Hazen.
Lillian here and Marie. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Wow. The room doesn't smell old, so.
No, I'm glad.
I thought it was going to be smelling super duper old.
So this is our informal parlor. So a much more active room compared to the one across the hallway there. This is more of your family room, used throughout the day. One of the things likely it was used for was the calling hour and the afternoon tea amongst the ladies of society. And one of the things we emphasize is while the ladies get to participate in the ritual, they're not the ones that actually preparing the ingredients for that ritual. They're not the ones preparing the tea. And tea today for us is a pretty simple process. You pop it out of the box, it's in a bag, 3 to 5 minutes. But back then you got to steep it properly. And you want to ensure that you don't oversteep it because you have bitter tea. And that could result, if you gave bitter tea, you might, if you're an enslaved person, it might result in some sort of punishment. And if you're a domestic worker, docked pay, firing, some sort of action there too.
Yeah. Bookcase I see over here.
Yes.
So we have the tea set here, you all. And again, for this to all be original, it's just amazing to me. I think there was a house in New Orleans that I visited, and a lot of the stuff there, which of course New Orleans, they hold on to everything anyway, was original. But this is pretty impressive, to be honest with you.
Honestly, one of my favorite things is just all the books we have.
Yeah. What were there during the Civil War? What was the? Oh, you got the Last of the Mohicans book.
Yeah, we've got a couple different copies, and I think they're very early editions.
Okay. So during the Civil War, in some of the writings, like in that journal, did she say anything in particular about the people that were here or anything like that?
Unfortunately, that's just, we don't have any written source like that. So a lot of what what we started doing was just providing that contextual kind of story.
Yeah.
And then it's just been over research over the last few years that has really been able to individualize those stories more with more details.
Okay.
But it's, as much as I wish there were some, I've read a lot through Laura Mabry's letters because she's the one that we actually have the most extant documents from. And you kind of hope for that just one little line in there.
That's all you want, that one thing.
And but unfortunately not so far.
Much.
Now, this is leading into the dining parlor.
It's interesting to see how many formal rooms that folks had back then, right? Like, now you got this one, you may have one formal room now, right? Like, but then it just seems like these places were more sacred places and only on certain occasions, obviously.
That's a big thing we talk about with the kind of our discussion of the social dynamics of the house. Like, for one, these rooms have very specific purposes. Like the formal parlor, for example, that's only for new acquaintances. That's for dignitaries. The dining parlor here is it's a fascinating room because before I was a historian, I was a chef. Okay. And so this is one of my favorite rooms. We're getting here and talk about food culture, about dining experiences. But this is also a really great room to understand the kind of divisions within the household.
Okay.
because you have the beauty of this room, the wonderful furniture, the the eye-catching china on the table, this epern on here, all are very, very great examples of fineries. And Laura Mabry, Alice Hazen, their job in the household is to manage it.
Yes.
They are deciding a menu, they are choosing these dishes, but then once they have those decisions made, they are delegating or commanding others to perform those tasks for them.
Yeah, and so that's obviously a story as it relates to just things on the day-to-day tasks in this house that people would have been responsible for,
Right.
Where were the enslaved dwellings at
So,
on the property?
interestingly, they're in the bottom floor of the house.
So do we have access?
Yes, we're going to go down there in just a minute. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going down there.
So
it's interesting. So, but those were just for the people that were working, of course, with here in the house. But what about outside buildings?
So that's when we don't have a better idea. So this is Mabry's kind of townhouse. He's a mile from downtown Knoxville. A mile east from here, Mabry also owned a horse farm. That's where we think most of the enslaved men were located. But that property, I've never had a good map to know where the dwellings are. The building does still exist.
Oh, really?
But it is a home for women. I think women that are going through some sort of domestic abuse or something like that.
So was that home built prior to this home?
Yes.
So that would have been an older Mabry.
Yeah. So that one was built in 1835.
Oh, wow, yeah.
By Robert Houston, which was Sam Houston's cousin.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So we think most of the enslaved men are, again, skilled laborers. They're farriers, they're jockeys, they are horsemen. Because Mabry was a major horse breeder here. He had thoroughbred racing horses. He would, stud and gamble on. But, again, Mabry's not out there doing that daily labor of grooming and caring for those animals. That is something he is forcing others to do.
Of course.
And it's one that I think really kind of speaks to the complexity of urban slavery. Because
which a lot of people don't which a lot of people don't necessarily consider it.
Yeah, right. I actually had a group yesterday, and we were walking through the house, and she was like, a woman asked me about, where were the field hands working here, and I was like, well, there are none because this is an urban environment. Yes, there's some rural and agricultural ventures here, but this is not an area you're going to see those sort of what most people imagine of American chattel slavery, which is the plantation.
Yeah.
And so we really want to use this place to help people have that broader idea of how pervasive slavery was within Southern and American society, that it is in urban spaces, and that you do have Black people that are living here with skills and having to help out these spaces.
Okay. And so this would be the place where the enslaved women or folks would be.
So just watch your step, watch your head.
All right. Let me...
And this is a floor that we have been working to open. We'll talk a little bit about that years-long project to get this space as part of our public viewing areas.
What document did you all have to identify as this space where the enslaved humans were dwelling?
A lot of it is contextual evidence. We don't have any exact document, but we do know this was the original kitchen of the house here. So this did not have a detached kitchen, which is odd for the South. But I think it's another one of those kind of architectural progressive choices that Mabry made. And a clue is right here. This has been cemented over, but this is probably a vent that was connecting to a cast iron cooking stove, which helped bring kitchens inside the house, because a major reason for a detached kitchen in the South was the heat that is generated in these spaces. Sure. Also, a big part was plantation culture and how it led to this desire to have segregated facilities between the enslaver and the enslaved. Yeah. But this is a case of, this kind of comes from Italian style housing as well. Within the idea of Italian architecture, you have the piano nobile, which is a fine floor, and it's often raised off the street level. And so we are actually on the bottom floor of the house. Okay. And so and in Italian architecture, that would have been where the working facilities would have been even at that time. Do we know any of the enslaved women that may have been worked? Obviously you all have 40 some odd names. Yes. But are there any specific that tie to being the cooks? No one that the Mabry family directly states.
Okay.
It is only through post-Civil War documents that we've been able to identify likely the cooks of the house. And
Okay.
that'd be someone like Eliza or Fanny.
Okay.
They will continue to be housekeepers and cooks post-emancipation.
And was their last name Mabry? Or
there's only one enslaved family that we believe took the Mabry surname, and that would be Wiley Mabry and his wife Sally.
Okay, and we'll talk about Wiley at some point. So these would be the Dillings.
Yes.
This would be the...
And these are some of the rare things that are not original pieces. The Mabry
Sure.
family did not keep these, but the piece that really, I think, is one of the most powerful in the collection, one of my favorite, is this right here. This is a biscuit table. So it's a cool piece of Tennessee marble cut out to roll out biscuits upon.
Wow.
And this dates to about 1850 to 1860.
Is this original to the house?
Yes.
This is.
Do you know how we know?
How do we know?
Mrs. Mabry's name is engraved right there.
Oh, it sure is.
It says Mrs. J.A. Mabry.
Yes, it does.
And probably a very prized possession of hers. These are kind of a status symbol. Mm-hmm. While we think of biscuits being,
yeah, I'm thinking about Biscuitville. I'm also thinking about Hardee's.
Yeah. Or your Pillsbury Doughboy can. You always have a can in the fridge because you just want some biscuits and gravy.
Yeah.
But for most Southerners, biscuits were kind of a luxury food, especially before the Civil War. Flour and had to be imported to the South. Wheat's grown in other parts of the country and then brought here. So you reserved your flour for special occasions or Sundays. And this is indicative that the Mabrys are probably making biscuits pretty often.
Pretty much.
Not only that, biscuits are laborious to make. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Typically, it's about 10 degrees cooler than the rest of the room. And so you can really see why it would have been a really useful tool for keeping that fat, that lard, firm.
Yeah.
But
I'm gonna grab.
So this today, biscuits are they're easy to make. You can pull them out of the fridge, you pop the can open, you put them on the table. But if you make biscuits from scratch, there's kind of a lot of knowledge in your eyes and your hands of getting that dough just right. So you get that nice rise in them. Mm-hmm. Now imagine that without refrigeration.
Yeah.
And so this table becomes really important in maintaining that firmness of the fat.
Yeah.
And also baking soda, baking powder are not readily available. Baking powder's not invented until 1871. So to get that nice rise in your biscuits, you'd often use a kitchen mallet like this, and you would beat the layers into the biscuits. And so someone like Eliza, maybe Fanny, can you imagine standing over this stone, having to work, putting in that time and that effort to create biscuits that, maybe they stole one from themselves.
Yeah.
But what I believe
would have.
I'm a chef. You got to taste your food to make sure it's good, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But what really makes this stone powerful for me is that this was once flat and level.
And that's the wear and tear.
That's
so you
the
see
wear.
Yeah.
You can almost see the motion of them rolling it and turning it to create that little indentation there.
Man, that's wild.
And it's a piece that kind of as I was speaking about earlier, was that Mrs. Mabry's name is on
Her name is on it.
So this is Mrs. Mabry's table.
It was made specifically for her.
But she's not using it.
She's not using it, no.
And so in that way, her name obscures the actual people that use this. And much of the way this house, in many cases, Mabry-Hazen House, kind of sometimes obscures the other people that have lived here, that have had experiences here. And so it's a neat way to kind of see how even the way that we think about artifacts sometimes can unintentionally cause the erasure of people. Yeah.
And you all have some signage over here
that
educates folks. Is it up to date?
It is not.
For you? Often when I come to these places, they're like, yeah, it's there, but
Well, last year we had a huge research breakthrough.
Okay.
One of the things is, you can see there's a woman named Eliza and her 10 children. This is the Franklin family. But when we initially designed this panel, we didn't know they were the Franklins. A lot of people think history is a very solitary practice, research, go in the archives, you sit there by yourself. But no, there's a great community out there that sometimes you get to share your findings. And in this case, a friend at the Historical Society in Knoxville Lisa Oakley, she found an obituary for a woman named Eliza Franklin, which stated, during slavery, she was the slave of Mrs. Joseph A. Mabry.
Huge breakthrough.
Huge breakthrough.
Yeah, that's huge.
And all of a sudden, we were able to see she was misnamed in her deed of sale.
Yeah.
And this is Eliza.
That's Eliza.
And
her children.
from that one source, we now have hundreds of documents connected to the Franklin family.
And then we have Fanny right here. You all mentioned.
And Fanny is someone I recently had a research breakthrough. I found her in the Knox County marriage records, and they assigned her the surname Mabry, but she married a Rogers.
She married Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see right here, and this is always, it sucks to see this, right?
Yeah.
But Emily, 34, her son Monroe was 5, and her infant of about 1 year purchased for $1,200 in June of 1862. And then Harriet was also unfortunately sold for $1,100 in June of 1862. So it looks like in 1862, he was offloading.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that, so is that when well, you said he's a money guy.
Yeah.
And so in 1862, is that when he kind of went over to the Confederate side?
No, he'd been with the Confederates. Mabry's always been, was a small scale slave trader.
I mean, I'm sorry, went over to the Union in 1862?
Not yet. That's still about I guess 15 months out from him.
Okay, because I didn't know if because he may have heard some things come down the pipeline that, hey, in 1863, this is probably going to happen. So a year before, I'm going to go ahead and, so that's the kind of line of thinking in which I had.
No, I really don't know.
Where's he from?
From here.
He's from Tennessee.
Yeah, so his father owned a plantation in West Knox County.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, and there's so much more we want to learn about these individuals, but it's just such a challenge to get into that research, especially for enslaved women, because of the way that you're trying to chase surnames.
Yeah.
And we get lucky every once in a while, and you get find that one document, and it just becomes a key that you're able to open up a huge chest of information.
Yeah.
But it is something that, our goal as a site is to be able to at least tell people where we're looking next. Mm-hmm. Because at least that way we can say, we know this much about this person. This is where we're looking because this is where we think we're going. And so that way somebody else maybe can take that banner for us and at least be able to continue that story.
So these doors, where did these doors lead to?
So this door originally led outside, but now it leads to the Hazen wing of the house, which is that addition built around 1890. Okay. And this floor we're undergoing an active redevelopment of this floor. Okay. During when I arrived here 8 years ago, we actually knew very little about the enslaved community here. Mm-hmm. And it became one of my major research projects to uncover as much as I could. And at the same time, I wanted to be able to do more interpretation, more individual stories here of that. But we couldn't do that because this entire floor was filled up with objects and stuff and things and trash and boxes. And one of the silver linings of the COVID lockdowns was an opportunity to get down here. At least
you weren't wasteful with the time that unfortunately we were given, but we were given.
Yeah, and so we tried to make the most of it. And this is the room we believe was the slave quarters of the house. Okay. Now these walls are a bit of a mystery. We haven't done a historic structures report, so we don't know what things were added, what things were. But we are going to be opening this up for full public visitation on Juneteenth this year.
So on Juneteenth this year, this former enslaved dwelling will be opened up for people to come and see where these formerly enslaved.
And along with that, we received a grant from the state of Tennessee for the 250th commemorations, and we're going to be putting up 4 interpretive panels talking about the Franklins, documenting slavery in East Tennessee. And then along with that, we're going to have 3 full-size silhouettes based upon artistic interpretations of the Franklins. Wow. And we're going to be partnering with the Beck Cultural Exchange Center for that. And that exhibit's not going to just be here, it's also going to be at the Beck too. So they're going to be amazing. One final full-size silhouette of John Franklin in his USCT uniform, because he would join the U.S. Colored Heavy Artilleries here in Knoxville and serve during the Civil War.
And, this kind of goes back to the conversation that we were having about urban enslavement. And because a lot of times individuals just may solely think outbuildings. Right. You know what I'm saying? But this is a prime example of what urban enslavement looks like and where individuals were enslaved in-house
Mm-hmm.
to do the in-house,
Yeah.
chores, tasks.
All
Of
that
course,
important
forcibly.
labor. Like,
Yeah.
you gotta keep your house clean. You gotta, do laundry. You gotta make food. All these important things that the Mabrys aren't doing, they're forcing others to do. And it gives us a much better idea of how that would have operated here in Knoxville and in East Tennessee too. So this is the Hazen addition, the rear wing of the house. But so this is all added around 1890. But I think what's really cool is this is the original back wall here. So this is the original wall here, and this would have been one of the original entrances to the house. So this is where the Franklins and other enslaved people would have entered the home. But even after the Civil War, it's not like, we saw racism because of it. And this would continue to be the entrance for many Black people because of the social dynamics in the South and even in Knoxville.
Mm-hmm.
And when we consider American segregation, we often imagine it within those public spaces, but we can see, if a Black person had come to the front door of the house, they would have been sent to this door.
Yeah.
And so it helps us better understand how those attitudes, those racist ideas, still would have permeated the private home as well.
And the same people who were enslaved living in these spaces are still here.
Right.
doing the work.
Right.
Still making the biscuits
Mm-hmm.
and everything else.
Right.
Just instead of Mabry at that time, her name would have been.
Well, in that case, we think it was the Joneses. So we do have a family after that's listed in the 1870 census, a Black family living here in the house.
In the house, period. In the whole house.
Yeah, they're listed in the census records as residents of the house. So we think they were the domestic workers, and they're still living in the former slave quarters.
Good God Almighty! Wow. Okay. So shall we head upstairs?
Yeah, let's take you upstairs.
All right, let's do it.
This is one of my favorite features of the house. I love this stairwell. Really beautiful design with a split landing that has two different flights leading up to the opposite sides of the top floor here. Wow. We're gonna go towards the front first. But this is the most private area of the house. We had to think few people ever beyond the Mabry-Hazen family and the domestic workers of the house are ever coming upstairs. For the domestic workers, it's going to be continued involvement in cleaning up these spaces, tending to fires, dumping out chamber pots.
Mm-hmm.
Never want to have to do that in my life.
Yeah.
And for the family, it's their personal space. We have the children's nursery here. Most of the toys belong to the Hazen girls, dates them to about the 1890s. And then we have the original master bedroom here, but this would go on to become Evelyn's room, and we interpret it as Evelyn's room. And we'll step into her room. So nearly all of the furniture in here belonged to Evelyn Hazen. Mm-hmm.
So she has some binoculars?
Her opera glasses.
Oh, opera glasses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me.
With the mother and pearl inlay there, so very fancy.
Is this her?
I actually don't know who that woman is. There's some mystery photographs in the collection where they just did not do it on there.
And this is the original too?
Mm-hmm. That's her, from her, she was a teacher, and so that is her name plaque.
Okay. Gotcha. And this is her closet?
Actually, that leads to the sitting room.
Okay.
Sitting room.
She had a sitting room.
That is a closet, though.
Okay.
But not a clothes closet. Maybe Evelyn used it for clothes. Mm-hmm. But originally, this is a very wealthy family. Mm-hmm. They're going to be putting closets in their house. Now, you may have heard the myth that homes with closets were taxed, mm-hmm. which is entirely a myth. Mm. It's more that most people didn't put a closet in their home because it's a fixed space. However, in this instance, the Mabrys probably put this in as a water or drawing closet. It is a private space to relieve yourself. So we can actually see that it's deep enough to mm-hmm. put a little chamber chair.
Yeah.
Or step in.
And what year did she pass again?
Evelyn died in 1987.
1987. And she would have been the great-great-granddaughter.
Just the granddaughter.
Just a granddaughter.
Yep, of Joseph Mabry.
So, are there any videos of her?
No videos.
So she would have, what year was she born again?
1898.
So she would have known formerly enslaved humans, obviously.
Yes, yep. And this becomes, a large part of her neighborhood becomes a large Black neighborhood as well. Yeah. Between East Knoxville, you see a very large Black middle class community build up. And she was actually friends with Ethel Beck. There's some videos of Bob Booker.
Yes, rest in peace.
Yeah. But Bob personally knew Evelyn as well. Evelyn sent Bob to meet with the head of HUD during the urban renewal negotiations. So
she was quite a lady then.
Yeah. But one of my favorite stories Bob tells about Evelyn is that she had a mouth of a sailor and would call Ethel Beck sometimes complaining about things and would just go off on these profanity-laden tirades with her. And Ethel would sit there and be like, I can't believe that woman cusses as much as she does.
So what do we got over this way?
So through here, this was a little breezeway probably. And then it leads into what we call the Hazen bedroom.
Okay.
So when Rush and Alice Hazen move into the home, they're given the entire rear of the upstairs for their living quarters. And so we interpret that this room as their bedroom.
And this is a nice sized room, y'all.
Yeah.
With big, beautiful windows as well.
Oh yeah, great views.
Then you got your shaving things over here.
I mean, to give you an idea of like, we still have, various different, toiletries and other things like, some aftershave here.
Yeah.
You want to smell it?
Yeah. It's going to knock me out. I'm going to get drunk off of it.
It's not too bad.
That's not too bad.
You want to try? So, I mean, we still have some of their perfumes. We've got old Ivory soap.
That's wild. Okay.
Well, we call this the pink room. It's actually one of the rare rooms in the house we really don't have a strong grasp of how it was occupied, who used it. We interpreted in the 1920s when Evelyn's older sisters come home. Sadly, all of the Hazen women, or Hazen girls, they suffered hardship in their romantic lives. So Evelyn had that ill-fated 15-year-long engagement that resulted in the trial and eventual kind of ostracization. But her oldest sister, Lillian, divorced her husband, and her second eldest sibling, Marie, separated from her husband. And so this is a space where we kind of talk about their time in the house as they moved back in the 1920s and lived out the rest of their lives here.
Okay. And again, y'all, these rooms are huge. And the ceilings are tall. How tall are the ceilings?
The upstairs ceilings are 10 feet. The main floor ceilings are 12 feet.
Golly. And so there's like what is that out there from this window I'm seeing?
So we've got the gazebo.
There's a gazebo that's out there.
The gazebo is an addition around the 90s, so we could do weddings up here.
Okay.
But then the other two houses across there, those were properties built by the Meek family after the Mabry-Hazens had sold off that land. And then in the 1970s, Evelyn purchased them and ran them as rental homes, and they were part of her estate when she died. And now one is a kind of a flex space. We do private events there, we do meetings there, and then the yellow house behind it is where we have our offices, archives, and then a one-bedroom apartment that I live in.
Okay. So, now you all have some annual events that you all do. Fill me in on that.
So our big upcoming event is actually going to be a commemorative bit for the 250th of the United States, the semi-quincentennial, and it's going to be called a New Birth of Freedom Summer Series. And we'll be hosting 4 programs over the summer to discuss the legacy of the American Revolution and its ideas upon the continuing efforts to achieve equality, freedom, and justice in the United States. And so we're going to tie together Tennessee Statehood Day, and then we will move to our Juneteenth programming, which is called And Then I Became Free, Stories of Emancipation at Mabry-Hazen House, followed by our big 4th of July celebration. And then we'll conclude with the 8th of August tours, which is Tennessee's Emancipation Day.
And this has just been amazing, Patrick. I'm glad we're able
to
finally make this happen. You know what I'm saying? What message would you like for individuals to know about this home? Because I think oftentimes when people think about homes that were former plantations, that for some people they're like, oh, well, there's no need for me to go there, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't include me or what have you. So what message would you all like to send out for people that are watching this at the Mabry-Hazen House?
Honestly, I want you to keep us honest. You now know these stories. We've shared them. And if you ever come at a point in the future and you don't hear those stories, we want to be called out for it. We want to have that sort of accountability that our community is holding us, that the people that inhabit this home, their stories, their experiences are worth telling. And we want to continue to tell those stories.
For sure.
And so we are always challenged by the fact that, people think of us as kind of a more of a traditional house museum, you know, and house museums have their issues, they have their challenges, but these can be places where you can hear full, inclusive stories, and it just takes intention to do it.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. Where can people find you all?
So you can find us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and then you can go to our website, Mabry-Hazen.com. Keep update of a lot of our other tours. Beyond the 250th tours we're doing this summer, one of our most popular is actually our Victorian seance experience. So we interpret American spiritualism in the United States right down to doing a 19th century seance.
Okay.
So we try to find relevant ways for people to engage with the site, and you know, just follow us and see what we have to say. You know, we share stories, we share artifacts. We try to keep people updated on what we're doing here as best as we can.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I greatly appreciate the opportunity, and I'm going to try to close out with this back shot because it's just absolutely dope. So listen, like I always tell you all, if you like underrepresented history or history that you just may not necessarily know about, definitely please make sure to subscribe and share this channel, and also consider becoming a member, because I got to travel to these places, and gas, as you know, right now is sky high, right? And we need to make peace and not war. And so I definitely encourage you all to become members as well. Hope you have a great day. Peace and blessings. So you all have a Civil War marker that's outside. And you had mentioned that some of the folks here who were formerly enslaved fought in the Civil War.
Yes.
So can you detail some of that information?
So one of the really kind of extraordinary discoveries with learning about the Franklin family was not just that, you know, about Eliza, about her relationship with Ben Franklin, but also what their children did. John, George, Cynthia, and Rachel, Franklin, all contributed to that fight for freedom. John, the eldest son, would actually enlist in the United States first United States heavy artillery out of Knoxville, and would serve until mustering out in 1866. And he actually is buried at Knoxville's National Cemetery. Okay. Then his George, his younger brother, would serve in the 44th USCT Regiment. But that regiment has a rather tragic story, because at the Battle of Dalton, half the regiment was captured and re-enslaved. And George, we believe, was and would die probably near Corinth, being forced to build entrenchments there. And then their two sisters, Cynthia and Rachel, would actually serve as nurses at one of the local hospitals here in Knoxville. And they received pensions after the Civil War, which is a big deal because it indicates that they were actually providing medical care for soldiers here. You could only receive a pension if you could prove that sort of contribution.
For sure.
And so here you have the Franklin children, all, you know, young adults, between the ages probably 17 to 21, that are seeing this opportunity. And I love to think about that because it allows you to think about how ordinary people can make extraordinary choices. And the Franklins would continue to be a really big part of the Black community here in Knoxville after the Civil War. And it's just really powerful to be able to tell their narrative now.